Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne here with you on this Wednesday midweek edition of Sidelines. Great show in store for you today. We will have Roman Harper, a proud native of Prattville, Alabama, the Prattville Lions. They've won a lot of state championships down there. He played at Alabama, 9 years with the Saints, the Hoodats, and also got a Super Bowl ring down there with the Saints, a couple of years with the Carolina Panthers. Of course, you see him on SEC Network, one of the best ones they have. I call him a truth broker. You ask him a question, he is not afraid to tell you what he thinks, and he knows the game of football really well. Be joining us here in just a minute. Got to run some carpool with the kids this morning, and I tell you what, I do miss those days. And then, of course, they were fun. It was crazy eating breakfast with one hand, driving with the other. God, that was fun. But segment number 2, Jake Wimberly checks in with us, ESPN 105.9, the afternoon drive from Jackson, Mississippi, the bold new city, the capital city. And hour number 2, Doug Dean checks in, the AU Dose from Birmingham, and Jordan Hill in the fourth segment, 24/7 Sports, covers Georgia for us. Always love having our guests on. They always are well prepared. They know what they're doing. It's not like when you watch people on TV that are supposed to be in charge of departments that don't know come here from Sikkim. Our guests really know what they're talking about. They know their craft. They study it. They practice it, and they do it right. They're great. A little bit of news here I thought I'd pass on today. Just when you look around at what all is happening, 15 or 20 basketball players are entering the transfer portal every day. Those numbers are down from about 75 a month ago. So far, about 1,400 players have entered the basketball transfer portal. It looks like Arkansas, Florida, Ohio State, they're off to great starts. Marquette, it's funny, they're considered to be on top of the basketball world without even adding anybody via the portal. That's because of retention. Their 9-man rotation is key. So far, none of those guys have left. The window for basketball in the transfer portal closes May 11th. Keep your eyes on that. The Big East with Marquette, Xavier, Creighton, UConn, the national champion, and others, the best basketball league in America. I thought it was the Big 12 during the season. Look, let's be fair. It was, in my opinion, the Big East, the Big 12, I guess the SEC, I'll give them third. But nobody in the conference, the SEC, made it past the Sweet 16. SEC baseball, Vanderbilt is on top of the SEC at the halfway point. 2 games up on Florida, and then Arkansas, LSU, South Carolina. They're all. It's going to be fun to watch. The second half of the season kicks off tomorrow, so get ready. Couple of interesting names in the transfer portal, though. Bear Alexander. Everybody remembers him in the Georgia TCU CFP National Championship game. He is a Texas native. He's entered the portal. And another big offensive lineman to keep an eye on, Cameron Johnson, offensive tackle out of Houston. Came out as a 3-star. So it's going to be fun to watch. It'll be really fun to watch what happens with these guys in the portal. And some interesting numbers. The latest survey released from the National Football High School Foundation, these are numbers really the first since 2018, 2019. They're showing that the 21-22 school year was the first year on record with fewer than 1 million players participating in 11-man high school football in America. Now, that's since the year 2000. That's in the last 23 years. I think it's pretty obvious what that's about. The virus, the pandemic, a lot of schools just shut their sports programs down altogether, and other schools did not. I think it's just a fact. I think those numbers will work themselves out. But we know that 10 years ago, there was a lot, really back in I'd say 12, 14 years ago, when the NFL began to start releasing a lot of the numbers about CTE and concussions and all, and the long-term effects those are having. That's when we started to see some numbers drop down. They dropped down significantly. And I think that those numbers dropped down significantly. And I think that's the key thing we need to be watching is how quickly will they come. I believe they will come back. But you've got other sports. Let's face it, a lot of the public schools, they offer a handful of sports. Then you get into a lot of the private schools, they're going to offer lacrosse. They're going to offer, swimming. There's so many other sports that pull people away. But we also do have multi-sport athletes. But I'm not going to buy into the rumors that, sports numbers and participation are so bad that it's going to hurt us. I just think that what happened during the pandemic, a lot of people quit playing sports. They quit doing anything. And a lot of them, during the height of it, went home and just closed the doors, stayed alone, went, and the families, whatever. I don't know what happened, but people are coming back out from hiding. There's no way to live. But those are the exact reasons why we had a dip. So for the first time in this century, since Y2K 2000, the biggest non-event I can remember, when we changed the computers, and I think a lot of people love to worry. People enjoy. They like panicking. I think it makes them feel like they have power. But and I'm going to talk to Roman Harper when he's on with us in a minute about this. I really believe that numbers in big cities that were shut down, it's going to take them a while to recover. And then you got guys that are going year round. It may be burnout is part of the problem. I don't know, but that is something we really need to be taking into consideration, is the fact that you've got guys, if you play football, if you play high school football now, you're going year round, okay? You're doing 7-on-7 camps. That can get old quickly. Just think about that. All right, Sidelines, though, let me just remind you, we are here with you 6 days a week, 8 to 10 a.m. Central, Monday through Saturday, live. And we are, when we're on, we're talking college football, basketball, baseball, recruiting. We do it 6 days a week. Follow us on Twitter at Sidelines_live. I see Roman in the green room coming in here via StreamYard, but we do a little over 50 hours of content per month. Okay. So I'm having a lot of fun. Right now, the big battle is who's got a quarterback, who's looking for a quarterback, who better to talk about all of this with than Roman Harper. And I'm wondering, I'm going to ask Roman this when he comes on with us here in a minute, if the coaching bug has gotten to him, if he's thinking about getting into coaching, because Roman's knowledge of football, when you watch him on SEC Network, it's exceptional. And I know the people in New Orleans love it. People in Charlotte love it. Carolina Panthers. 11 years. You last 11 years in the NFL. You've got to be tough and you've got to be smart. There's no other way you're going to make it that long. But college football, we had 8 spring games last weekend. Alabama's A-Day game will be Saturday. At this point, Alabama has not named a starter. It could be Ty Simpson, who came in as a 5-star a couple of years ago, redshirted out of Martin, Tennessee. Jalen Milroe out of Texas. He is just an exceptional athlete. Quarterback, can throw. If Nick Saban hadn't named a starter yet, probably have a much better indicator of how that's going to happen come Saturday. Hey, Roman Harper. Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How about you?
Hey, who we got with us right there? What's his name?
This is my son, Little Roman, or Roman the Second. He's
all right.
He wasn't feeling well this morning before school, so I let him stay home. Now he's feeling better. And so I just dropped my baby boy off at school. I'm gonna make us a little bit of breakfast, and then he's ready to go back to school. He's like, Dad, I feel better now. I just had to get a little bit off my stomach. I'm ready to go to school. So I'm gonna take him to school after this interview.
I love it, Roman. We'll be quick. We had in high school, we had one of the brothers, Brother Adrian, could call the house and would interrogate my mother if I ever missed a day of school. And you would end up going to school even if you didn't feel well. There was no way to escape. But I miss those days. I've got 4 kids now that I've remarried. I've got a 4th one that lives in Atlanta. And I got to tell you, I miss those days of going to carpool. Roman, I'd call you the truth broker. When you're on, when I watch you on the SEC network, why is this program not doing well? Why is this team not doing well? You give honest answers. We had 8 spring games last weekend in the SEC. Alabama's got their game coming up Saturday, and they haven't named a quarterback yet. We had Rodney Orr on from Tider Insider with us yesterday. You got Ty Simpson, you got Jalen Milroe. At this point, you've played a lot of football, and I don't know if you're interested in ever going into coaching. I think you'd be a hell of a coach because I like your calmness, but you've got a football IQ that's off the charts. But what about that Alabama quarterback situation? And then just take us around the SEC as you see it.
Well, number one, I mean, it will come down. We'll see who wins this quarterback battle. I think this is not their first time they've done this before. The coaches have been through these things. I'm just truly interested, honestly, in how different do they look offensively and defensively. Yeah. I don't think they'll look much different defensively because that's Nick's baby. But offensively, I want to see what else new wrinkles Tommy Rees brings in, and if Nick allows him to, implement those little wrinkles offensively. And from there, the quarterback battle, I mean, it intrigues me a little bit, but Nick hasn't got this wrong yet. So I don't think that starts to all of a sudden happen. And so whenever I have those type of questions or situations arise when it comes to Alabama, I just repeat my little mantra that I always say every year, and that is that in Nick I trust. So whatever Nick Saban says, it's usually for the betterment of the team. He doesn't – I've never seen him get this decision wrong. Even when he sat Tua behind Jalen for all those games and then all of a sudden brought Tua in late, won a game the following year, to be able to name Tua a starter after all the success Jalen Hurts had, not only did it kind of show you who Nick Saban was, but then the wherewithal, it also showed you to what Jalen Hurts was. And congratulations to him just getting this big-time contract just the other day. So everybody usually wins when they actually see it through at Alabama in some shape, form, or fashion, whether you're able to create value for yourself and go on to an NFL career, or off the field, you just learn from the battles and being at a tough competitive environment that usually makes you a better person overall. Because what I've always known in life is that competition brings out the best in everybody, and it's highly competitive on that campus when it comes to football.
Yeah, and I'm a huge Jalen Hurts fan because I watched the way he handled himself in 2018, and when Alabama needed him at the end of the season, he was there, made it in on that touchdown when he just laid it out on the line. You got to love him as a teammate. You would love going to battle with a Jalen Hurts, wouldn't you?
You'd have to. And look, this is my biggest thing with Jalen is that he's literally improved every year since he got out of high school, like continuously. It's something he's gotten better at every single year. And you love those type of players where, no matter what people say, no matter who doubts, all they do is just get better. They don't worry about the things that they can't control. They control their effort, what they put into it. And all of a sudden you hard work does pay off and you get that final result. And for him, it wasn't the result he wanted. But if you would have said that out of all these quarterbacks that came out that year, that Jalen Hurts was going to be the one to go to the Super Bowl, nobody would have guessed that. So it's just really important to see the steady improvements that Jalen's been able to do, and that he stuck through it, that he didn't leave when everybody leaves now, whenever they don't get the starting job. Yeah. He stayed there. He graduated, and he contributed still. Even in later games throughout the year, he showed signs like, man, he's actually better in passing, even though he wasn't playing. And then in the SEC championship, like you mentioned, bringing Alabama back, it really kind of solidified him as like, man, this guy is an Alabama great, and he's going to be part of us no matter what happens going forward. And then to be able to go to Oklahoma and still under Lincoln Riley and still put up major numbers and get in the Heisman finalists and be a candidate for that. And now being the highest paid NFL player in all time, for right now, the record will be broken at some point. But for you to still have that title, it means something. Look, for me, I was the highest paid in my position at one point in time. So I still am able to brag on that. Look, those numbers always get blown out of the water, and it will continue to do that. So it's what it is.
Yeah. Roman, we're going to take a quick break for about 30 seconds. When we come back, I want to get your thoughts. I'll just tell you about Spencer Rattler. The question was brought up yesterday. I was actually on a show in Jackson, Mississippi yesterday. I think Spencer Rattler is going to have a hell of a year. It seems like Shane Beamer can relate to him. We know about his couple of years when he was pulled out of the Texas OU game, but South Carolina really came on strong at the end of the season. I want to talk about the SEC East and Tennessee. Last year, you picked them to win 10 games. I picked them to win 9 or 10. So we'll be right back. Roman Harper, Super Dad, right after this. All right, Rob Browne back with Roman Harper. And Roman, man, thank you so much for doing this. And I can remember doing this with my kids sometimes. You go get them at school, you bring them home, and they're ready to go back to school. And I mean, I remember those, God, and forgetting their lunches.
Yes, that's a big deal. My son, he'll walk clean out the house with no book bag, just nothing. I'm like, dude, what are you gonna do today? He's like, yeah. Oh. Then he runs. But I'm not perfect because I've forgotten the kids' lunch or two. So,
I used to stop at Chick-fil-A about 3 times a week, especially Wilson. Dad, I don't like what they're having today. I'm like, well, I'll be by there, and then I just had to stop. And I wish Chick-fil-A was publicly traded because it's a great stock to buy. I'm telling you, Roman, got to say this about South Carolina. Have you had a chance to be around Shane Beamer? Because I watch when y'all go on the road a lot and you interact a lot, but you're in Charlotte. And my son Wilson moved up there, graduated from Auburn almost a year ago, moved from Birmingham to Charlotte, and he's working in the investment banking world up there. And I think he's working about 16 hours a day. Kind of reminds you of when you played pro football. Jason Campbell told us one time, he said, look, the difference in the NFL is you get after practice, you go home, you think you can take a nap. No, that fax machine's loaded with 30, 40, 50 pages of plays that you've got to study. Talk about what it's like for a guy like Spencer Rattler to play for Shane Beamer, because it seems like they're a good fit.
They are a good fit. I was just in South Carolina. I covered their spring game. I called it. Yeah. So I got a really good up-close personal view of what they're trying to get accomplished offensively. They got a couple new tight ends that's going to be really big. Trey Knox from Arkansas came over with Dowell Loggins. And then also, sorry, my son just keeps getting
I love it. Roman, I love kids. Don't worry.
And then we also got another tight end transfer from Western Kentucky, Joshua Simon. Look, both of these tight ends are very big. They're athletic. So that's going to give Spencer another weapon right down the middle. The only thing I'm a little concerned with is if their top two guys, Xavier Leggett and Juice Wells, if anything goes wrong with them, they don't really have a lot of receiver depth that you want to trust down the line versus top-tier SEC talent. But other than that, though, you got some really good pieces on offense that can go forward. They got a running back named Mario Anderson that transferred from a smaller school. It's literally slipped my mind. Anyways, he's a downhill running back, so they may have a running back that's going to be able to compete and do some different things. But overall, I love Spencer's mindset. I talked to him. I did an interview with him during the spring game, and he was dead on it. And the thing that I really enjoy is that the offensive coordinator that Shane Beamer brought in, Dowell Loggins, look, he's coached in the NFL 16 years. He went to Arkansas the past 2 years as a tight ends coach. So really coming from the NFL, now being in college, seeing the differences in where not only the hash marks make, but also being able to play with a type of tempo or pace, being able to go, no huddle, but also bringing the NFL part of the game where still a lot more just straight drop back passes, implemented a little bit of RPO, but also the blocking scheme, the protection schemes are more NFL relatable. And now, according to Shane Beamer, they got times where they can run hurry up offense and get some things going where last year, because of the communication differences, they don't quite have all that ability to be able to do that. And Loggins did a good job of saying, hey, you know what? I'm going to take a lot of the same things that what you guys used in the terminology to keep it same as. So it's better for one person, which is me, to learn a couple different things and new terminologies versus 47 or 48 other guys learning my terminology or trying to make it difficult. So it's a really good marriage right now. And right now, Spencer and I also talked with Luke Doty, and look, they all raved about how good it was in the type of relationships that they're building there. And they also have a young freshman quarterback that they're really excited about as well.
I like that because Spencer Rattler, when he came into the SEC, my take was, what kind of teammate is he? But for you to say that just means that he's really in a happy spot because Shane Beamer knew him from being at Oklahoma. So it's been a great fit.
Well, and I would say that too. I don't mean to cut you off, but everybody had that concern about Spencer Rattler. What type of teammate was he? What type? And you know what? I haven't heard one bad thing said about him since he got to South Carolina, within that locker room, within the people in that program. And so that matters a lot because I can't listen to people on the outside. I can listen to the people that know him best or who are around him the most. And so he's really, maybe it was a change of scenery, and it does a lot of us really good sometimes. And I've been through that in my career. And so he's done great. I think he understands the responsibility. And look, talent's not the issue when it comes to Spencer Rattler. And it's going to be all about the decision-making, taking care of the football. And if you do all that, look, sometimes to show the best version of yourself to NFL scouts, you don't have to throw for more yards. You don't have to throw for more touchdowns. But if you win more ball games, you control the tempo in which the game is played, you make smarter decisions with the football, you turn the ball over less. NFL people love that a lot more than sometimes just putting up a lot of numbers and kind of throwing it all over the ballpark. And most importantly, I think the biggest issue for South Carolina that they're going to have to make sure they get ready is, number one, taking care of the football. Number two, you got to protect the quarterback. At times last year, they did not protect the quarterback on offense.
Hey, I love what you just said. I know from being a reporter, some of the toughest stories I ever had to do, you have to go to the source. You can't listen to all the outside noise. And I think that's great what you did, because hearing you say that, knowing your track record and your credibility as a player and in the NFL means everything. About Tennessee, as an Auburn man, you're an Alabama man. That's the greatest road trip is Neyland Stadium in Knoxville. I mean, and Mark still says, next time I see Roman, we're cooking brisket. You really ought to start doing a little segment on Saturdays, SEC Nation, Roman's tailgate. You really, I mean, because it is fun to have people come and eat your food. And Mark, he does that every Saturday. Tennessee, on the banks of the Tennessee River, the Vols, 10-2, 11-2 last year with the win over Clemson. Joe Milton III's coming in. He's been there with Josh Heupel for a couple of years now. No more Hendon Hooker. How good can Tennessee do? Can they do an encore to that and do better? Or are they going to struggle to get back to those 10 or 11?
Oh, all right. So, number one, my biggest thing when I look at any team in the SEC, the scheduling matters. When and where you play games at matter. Like who, when, and where. Those are the two biggest things, the three biggest things when I look at a team's schedule or what I'm projecting their win total to be. Yeah. I think Joe Milton staying and not leaving when he lost the job a couple of years ago was huge, not only for Tennessee, but for him as well. And if you listen to his words, what he would say last year was that, you know, I feel like I'm getting better, not only as a quarterback, but as a person in this locker room and with Hendon Hooker and on this team. And so you saw it really show up when in the Clemson game where they just blew Clemson out of the water. And so you're hoping you can repeat that. It'll be interesting to see who are the receivers are going to be and really have to step up. They lost their two top guys in Tillman and Jalen Hyatt last year. They lost a star-studded offensive lineman, and the right tackle is going to be a first-round pick this year. So they got some things to replace. And they brought in so many guys from the transfer portal a year or so ago, and now they're starting to try and build it through the high school ranks. I want to see how Tennessee continues to progress. I think they will be the second-best team in the SEC East. I don't know if I'm ready to call 10 wins regular season like I did last year, which I was right. But it's very interesting. I just think they're just ahead. And the SEC East is, you know, after Georgia, it's a toss-up. So Tennessee is going to win that toss-up over the other teams. Look, I like South Carolina too, but I don't like South Carolina's schedule. I don't. It scares me. Tennessee's schedule doesn't scare me as much. Florida, I don't think is as good as what they would like to be or where we want to think they are because they're Florida. Doesn't matter to me this year. Georgia's clear-cut the best team in the SEC East. I don't know. Could Georgia lose a game? Possibly so. But it doesn't matter. They still could lose one game and still end up in the SEC championship and then win it. So if you're a one-loss SEC champ, you're still in the playoffs. So for me, I got Georgia, and I will continue to pick Georgia until they prove me wrong. So far, they have not, and we'll see going forward. But I think Tennessee will be the second-best team in the SEC East if I had to name it right now, just because of Joe Milton, the way how hard their offense is to defend, no matter who's lining up where they are. And they do bring back Jamari Small, the running back. And, of course, I think they got Squirrel White and a couple other people on the outside that have made some plays. But it's still to be seen how explosive this offense is going to be, especially because Hendon Hooker was so crucial at times, scrambling for first downs or getting the ball to like 2nd and 4, just on crucial scrambles on first or second down. Joe Milton is not that type of quarterback. He's not the runner and scrambler or creative that Hendon Hooker was at times.
Yeah. One last question. And by the way, love you when you fill in for Paul Feinbaum. You're great. That interview you had with Steve Smith.
I only did that one time.
Why not more?
I would love to do it again. Well, because I'm gone a lot and I got.
I know.
But they did invite me back. So I was so nervous. I'd actually never even thrown it to a commercial before. So until that day. So for my first time doing a lot of those things, it was really fun. I had a great time. And they already said I could come back and do it again. So hopefully I'll continue to do more and more of that. That is Paul's show. But I love going at the Feinbaumers. I mean, it's amazing what he's been able to build.
Hey, you calm me down, and you're a lot younger than I am. I mean, and your demeanor on there is great, but that chat you had with Steve Smith, he's a badass. I'm alpha male culture all the way, and that was. I mean, he talked about a lot of these guys are afraid to go over the middle. Hey, man, you got a man. One last question: if you could say something to KJ Jefferson, Arkansas's quarterback out of Sardis, Panola County, 8 miles from Vaught Hemingway Stadium. Would you say, A, just keep doing what you're doing, run and whatever, or think about just the big picture? Because he is so talented and he doesn't throw many interceptions. I'm just curious what your take is on
him. Number one, I would tell him what he's great at, which is, number one, his deep ball is like perfect. He throws such a great deep ball. And then the offense is built to allow him to run the football. I would say, you know what? I would say not every hit is worth it.
Yeah.
And so the way you're going to win more ball games is to have you available. Like we don't win if you're not out here. So I need you available. So not every hit is worth it. And so you don't always have to push the pile. You don't always have to fight for extra yardage. Take some of these hits off your body, slide, protect yourself, and then live to fight another day, because as long as you're fighting another day, we will fight another day. And so we win when you play. And we understand how hard it is in the SEC West. It is a gauntlet. It is a gauntlet. And we won't survive this gauntlet without you. So it's more important for him to be on the field, because when he's on the field, he does what he does, whether it's throwing and completing passes. And I thought he showed leaps and bounds of improvement in throwing the football in the pass game at times. And so he made receivers that had not been good look a lot better last year. And so I want to see that continue to grow. And if he does that, if he takes another step in that category, I think he will be one of the top quarterbacks in the SEC. It'll be him. I'm really looking forward to seeing that part of it. But also they got to continue to put some weapons around him. That's the one thing that we miss. We talk about Jalen Hurts and the big improvements that he made in the NFL. Well, you know what helped? They gave him a lot of weapons around him. And so when you drafted Devontae Smith, you bring in an A.J. Browne, you got the really good tight end down there, the offensive line, you continue to draft and build around those guys. That allows a quarterback to be successful because he has weapons on the outside and around him that allows him to play at his best. That's what I want to see from Arkansas. And it will be different because it's a different offensive coordinator because Browne's left to TCU.
Yeah. It'll be fun. Hey, Roman, thank you so much, man. You're an awesome dad and awesome to come on here. We really appreciate your time. It means a lot to us. How do people follow you? And if you can give us a retweet, we'd appreciate it. Any exposure. You've got a lot and we appreciate it. You got a lot of followers because you speak the truth, and God, you know football. And I got a lot of Arkansas friends over here at the farm, and I wanted them to hear that about KJ Jefferson, because I'm a big KJ fan. I am too. But how do people follow you?
All right, it's Harp41 on Twitter, and I think Harp_41 on Instagram. I mean, it's pretty much the same. Just type in Roman Harper. I'm like the only one that pops up. Blue check me, so it's good.
All right, look forward to having you on again, and look forward to seeing you on the Paul Feinbaum show again. I'm waiting for you and Jim to go at it.
Hey, you know what? I had one guy call in and we literally was like, I don't even like you as a guest. But you did really good at an interview one time, and I was like, I don't even know how I'm supposed to take that, but thank you. I guess it was cool. I had a couple guys. I had JK, the Bama hater, call in, or one of these Bama haters. I really enjoy this, and look, I think for my first time, I wasn't all the way ready, but next time, I'm like, I got some stuff in my bag for everybody. That's all I'm saying. Well,
we're looking forward to it. And Frank Duffy wants to get you down there to Mardi Gras as well, because he is a huge fan. You are a God-like figure for the Who Dat Nation. But anyway, have a great day, and hope you and your son have fun. Hope he gets better.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Have a good one. Bye-bye, Rob.
You too. Thank you. I tell you what, that is Jake Roman Harper. You love it. He's got 4 kids, young kids. They took him to school. He didn't feel good. Brought him home. As soon as he got home, he was ready to go back to school. And I said, I remember those days, and holy cow. But that was an interesting discussion. I asked him about a Mississippi native, 8 miles from Vaught-Hemingway, KJ Jefferson. He loves him, that deep ball and everything. And the SEC, Jake, you and I were talking yesterday. He also had a good chance. He got to broadcast the South Carolina spring game. Got to spend some time with Spencer Rattler, and agreed with what you and I talked about on your show yesterday, the afternoon drive, ESPN 105.9 in the bold new city, Jackson, yesterday. But he really likes where he is personally with Shane Beamer. And then you think about the importance of having a great mentor. You wish, man, we're going to miss Mike Leach. Every time I think about this, how important he was for Will Rogers. Have you talked to Will Rogers or had a chance to ask him, like, who does he look to now?
Yeah, and several things. One, we'll get back to KJ Jefferson. I do have some thoughts on that. What you and Roman were talking about.
Jake, hey, we're gonna go to a break. I don't want to get you started. I didn't. Mildred just showed me the stopwatch here. We're gonna take a quick break here in a second because I want to get your thoughts, folks. You need to listen to this show afternoons. Tell them real quick the show.
Yeah, it's just the afternoon drive, 3 to 6, Monday through Friday here in Jackson, Mississippi. We cover 2/3 of the state on the terrestrial radio dial 105.9. You can always stream us on the zone1059.com, Monday through Friday right here in the great state of Mississippi.
All right, we'll be right back with Jake Wimberly after this.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne back with Jake Wimberly. And Jake, let's get started on your quarterback response, because this KJ Jefferson he's under the radar on a lot of people, but he came back and he's got Dan Enos with him now.
Look, Rob, he was under the radar here in the state of Mississippi as a high school player. Played at North Panola, and if you know anything about the state of Mississippi, the Panola that everybody always references is South Panola. North Panola, kind of an afterthought up there in North Mississippi, but he flew right under the radar as a high school player. He was a Mississippi Alabama All-Star product. Really didn't have any interest from Mississippi State or Ole Miss other than tight end. And you got to credit Sam Pittman and at that time Kendall Browne for coming into the state of Mississippi and seeing something in this young man. And a lot of people said, wow, he's going to Arkansas. I remember this when he was recruited, and they said, wow, he'll be back in the state of Mississippi before you know it. He'll end up somewhere back in the state. Didn't happen. He went to the state of Arkansas, really, kind of hit the ground running at the state of Arkansas, and the rest is history. And man, what a quarterback he has become. And, you see this from time to time in all states, but you look back at it, and KJ Jefferson's one that got away from Mississippi State and Ole Miss, or either Southern Miss in this state right here in our own backyard.
Yeah, and I talked to Yancey Porter a lot, Rebel Yell Hotline, and he said the same thing, that he just 8 or 10 miles from the vault, and he goes up there to Arkansas, and he even thought about going into the transfer portal at the end of last season with Kendall Browse leaving and all, but him staying is one of the biggest recruiting gets in college football. Back to Will Rogers. He set that record last year, 24 games earlier than what Aaron Rodgers, former Georgian, Aaron Murray. Yeah, sorry. Hold it, too much coffee. But he did it in 24 games quicker than what Aaron Murray did, former Georgia quarterback. People don't give this guy enough credit. I mean, Will Rogers he's a damn good quarterback. How much better can he be without Mike Leach?
Will has faced, and I do know Will personally. I know that family very well. I actually didn't mean to today, repping the Brandon Bulldog High School shirts here. I do their play-by-play. I've been doing it for 15 years, or right at 15. So Will played at Brandon High School. I know his father really well. He's the offensive coordinator at Brandon High School, quarterbacks coach, been there for a long time. And, Will was kind of under the radar here in the state of Mississippi. A lot of people, for whatever reason, did not believe Will was a Division I quarterback. His junior year, had a monster year in the state of Mississippi, took Brandon deep into the playoffs in the highest classification in the state of Mississippi. But a lot of people felt like that was because he had Jonathan Mingo, who ended up going to Ole Miss. And, of course, he'll be picked up next week in the NFL draft at some point. His senior year, he just got better. He was a Mississippi Alabama All-Star product. The state of Mississippi has had some struggles over the years in that All-Star game. Will threw a touchdown pass to Jaden Wiley, who was at Mississippi State late in that game, and they won that football game. And all Will has done is win. All he's done is make plays and make throws his entire career. You asked about who does he turn to now moving forward.
Yeah.
He really, really loves Zach Arnett. I think they have a really good relationship. He has developed a really good relationship with Barbe, the new offensive coordinator. And, for somebody like Will, you don't replace Mike Leach. But, to have a father like Will has, his father Wyatt, which is a very, very savvy football mind. He's been around a long time. He is a mentor not only to Will, he's still a mentor to Gardner Minshew, who's with the Indianapolis Colts. So to have that kind of father on your side, too, that really, really helps. And I look for this to be a big year for Will. I think they'll take more shots down the field. I think they'll be a little more careful about some of those things that they do. But I mean, you get a seasoned quarterback who's played a lot of SEC football. I think he's going to have a heck of a year this year.
Yeah. And think about that. Brandon, Gardner Minshew and Will Rogers out of that one program. There are a lot of programs that have never had a quarterback go on to success at another level. Looking now at Ole Miss, Jackson Dart, last year, he was the guy that Lane Kiffin really went after. He liked him a lot. Luke Altmaier's gone. He's at Illinois now with Brett Bielema. But you've got Quinshon Judkins back as a running back. And he's got to be one of the 3 or 4 best freshman years ever with Herschel Walker, Bo Jackson. That's how good a freshman year he had. What do you look for Ole Miss to do this year? Because obviously people get a book on every player. This is year 2 for Quinshon. How much better can he be? And is he a legit Heisman candidate?
I think on paper, he's probably a legit Heisman candidate. But, Rob, we know how this Heisman thing works,
yeah,
right?
Exactly.
You got to win double-digit games. You got to be in the mix. And if you're going to be a running back, I've always said this, and I adore the Heisman Trophy. I have the utmost respect for the award. But it's become a glorified quarterback award. It's the Davey O'Brien Award, but just on a different level. It's one of those other types of awards, the Johnny Unitas Award. It's a shame that we don't see more running backs and wide receivers. And I know Devontae Smith won it a couple of years ago. But no, Judkins, I think, is one of the premier talents in the country. His game is only going to get better. He makes that offense go. And regardless if it's Jackson Dart or if it's Spencer Sanders or Walker Howard, behind center, having a running back that the defense has to dial in on. And not only that, the guy's getting better at catching the football out of the backfield. He's a catalyst that Lane Kiffin obviously is going to build this offense around. I think this offense is going to be better than it was last year. They get Michael Trigg back off an injury at tight end. Yeah. They've got a transfer tight end that they feel really high on. They've got some receivers, obviously one in from Texas A&M. The offense should be better. The question is going to be defensively, what does Pete Golding do with this unit? There's still a learning curve there. And the schedule flips this year for Ole Miss. They have to play Georgia. Anytime you pick Georgia up and you're dropping anybody else, that's a monster deal. They got to go to Tulane in week 2. That's a really good Tulane team down in New Orleans. So they could be better, but their record may not show it.
Yeah. Last year, the schedule was back end loaded. I would hate that as a coach and as a player. You like to have the games, dispersed throughout the season. You wish you could. Thinking about the Tulane game, they got to go at Auburn, at Alabama, at Georgia. That's a murderer's row. But when you look at the schedule, April 19th, which is today's date, it's far more daunting now than it will be at the time because week to week guys are injured. Their academics, their girlfriend leaves them. God only knows what happens. There's a lot. That's why the most important 6 inches on the field is between your ears. But I'm looking around at this conference, and we don't even have Oklahoma and Texas in yet. But in the West right now, who do you pick? LSU, Arkansas, Alabama hadn't decided on a quarterback. But like Roman said, in Nick, I trust, he hasn't gotten it wrong yet since he's been there. They always figure it out. They took John Parker Wilson, being a 500 quarterback, to a 12-win quarterback in his second year. And he was a pretty good quarterback anyway out of Hoover. I look for Alabama to, they're going to figure that out. But A&M, that's the wild card. A ton of talent last year, didn't do anything. A lot of those guys have left. Now you bring in Bobby Petrino. I think they're going to go at it, and it's just going to be hard. Jimbo's not going to relinquish all that authority, but it's a desperate move is what I see.
No, there's no doubt it's a desperate move. Jimbo Fisher would never say this publicly, and he doesn't have to. He knows that he's under the gun, so to speak, at Texas A&M. When you bring in the number one recruited class ever at that time on the 247 Sports composite, and then you drop a 5 spot. Defensively, this team was pretty good. They gave up around 22 points a game, but it was a bend but don't break defense. They couldn't get off the field on third downs a lot of times. As Olin Buchanan from Texags always calls it, he said they had a popcorn gun type of pass rush. It wasn't that good. But if they can keep that defensive, number at around 22 and then get that offensive number up around 30, that's about a touchdown per game average up.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like a lot, but this team flips that record and they go 8-5, 9-4, or 8-4, 9-3, somewhere in that realm. But you're right. It's very reminiscent of Clay Helton and what Clay Helton was doing at USC before Lincoln Riley got there. A lot of talent, head scratching years, couldn't get off the field, lost to a lot of teams. Jimbo Fisher's kind of in that spot right now. And the difference is he's playing in the SEC West. So they've got the talent. When they get off the bus, they look as good as anybody. It's just offensively, what do they look like? Does Connor Wigman or one of these other quarterbacks, Max Johnson, really kind of take the team, bull by the horns and make this offense produce? Something Jimbo Fisher really hasn't had since he's been down there. Something Texas A&M hasn't had since Johnny Manziel. It's going to be an interesting story to follow.
Well, it is. And you think about now Texas coming into the league. A&M now cannot be the only school to say, hey, come play in the SEC. Texas can do it. I think it's going to make Texas more attractive to defensive linemen because, we and I were talking on your show yesterday. Why go – and this is what, Texas – Anwar Richardson with orangebloods.com talks about. Why go waste your talent in the Big 12 chasing quarterbacks that you can't catch? Go to the SEC and look at the number of guys that are going. Could you be the next Jalen Carter? Could you be you're more likely to do it in the SEC. A&M's got to get this right. And before Texas gets into the league, because when Texas gets in, there's no turning back. This is their last year without Texas. They're going to have to start playing them again too. It's all about and we have TexAgs.com, Olin Buchanan on the show a lot. God, he knows his football. It's one of my favorite guests we ever have. And I think about it. They both have a ton of money, a ton of facilities, and they're players all over the state of Texas. But why, since 1970, has that state only produced one national champion? And the SEC, in the last 50 years, has produced 20. Doesn't make sense if you think about just the money.
It does. It's an interesting case study. And the only thing that I can come up with is you got to look at the cultures of the program. And a lot of times when you say culture, people instantly think, players are bad off the street. Players, got a bunch of knuckleheads. And that's not necessarily the case. Is, who's running those programs? We talk about this and this about rogue boosters and things going on at Auburn. What's it like at Texas? What's going on at Texas and what has been going on at Texas? And the same thing can be said for Texas A&M. You've got to start asking questions is what is wrong with those cultures inside those buildings, administration wise? Why are these teams not winning any more than they are? Because you're right, with all the money, all the talent that's in the state of Texas, Texas A&M and Texas collectively should have at least a title or two between them. And there's not many of those over the last 30, 40 years.
Yeah. Look at Florida. They never did it until 1983 when Miami leapfrogged everybody from 5th to 1. Remember that year, Nebraska was number 1 on New Year's Day, Texas number 2, and Auburn number 3, Georgia number 4, Miami 5. If Texas beats Georgia, but they didn't. They lost 10-9 in the Cotton Bowl. Would Texas have been the national champion? If Auburn wins 42-0 over Michigan, would they have been? And would we ever have heard about the U? I tend to think we would have, because I think Howard Schnellenberger had woken up the sleeping giant of Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach County. That's just my take. But you look at the state of Alabama, if you count national championships the way a lot of people do, if anyone gives it to you, you better count it. Since 1970, Auburn's won 4. Alabama's won 7 or 8. Georgia's won 3. And, the population of Alabama is 5.1 million. LSU, Louisiana, 5.12 million. They've won 3. You look at the state of Mississippi per capita, puts more guys in the NFL than any state. I've got an Ole Miss friend of mine from down in Tunica County who said for years, we need to just create the super university and put it in Jackson. I mean, what would happen? Could you imagine a super university in the state of Mississippi? Because, again, per capita, nobody does what Mississippi does. And they've got the back-to-back national champions in baseball. Kind of pontificating here, but what do you think? Am I too much coffee?
No, I mean, look, that conversation has been had many years about, hey, if State and Ole Miss and Southern Miss decided, hey, let's just bulldoze all the universities, build one university and call it the University of Mississippi. But then Mississippi State fans say, wait a minute, we don't want to be called the University of Mississippi. But you're right. I mean, it would be an unbelievable sight to see, so to speak. But I don't think we'll ever have that. But you're right. I mean, there's a lot of talent here in the state of Mississippi. The problem is with the 2 SEC universities and Southern Miss, and then Alabama and Auburn and LSU and others coming in to cherry pick this talent. It's just hard to keep it all right here.
Yeah, and it's not. I've just always, my friend would say that and he's still around and he's a very smart guy. But I'm like, wow, could you imagine if they did that? Look at Texas. Texas has. Now you've got UT San Antonio, North Texas State. There's probably 9 Division I schools in that state and a population of 30 million people that we know of. And I look at Florida. It forever, Florida couldn't get it going. Florida State. Here's a trivia question. Can you name the coach at Florida State who was there that Bobby Bowden replaced? This is always a good trivia question to win you a steamer pack of crystals.
I cannot remember who that guy was, to be honest with you.
What, Daryl Mudra? The only reason I know it is because I've heard that trivia question asked so many times on radio and shows and podcast over the years. But you think about Bobby Bowden. We were in Tallahassee, March of 1976. I went over with my dad one day during spring break. He had a meeting with the athletic director and the new president Florida State had brought in about their vision. And I remember this, March of 76, they said, look, we just hired us a football coach from West Virginia, and they hung him in effigy. And he's coming down here, and we're going to build a program, and we've got the population, there's talent, we've got everything we need, and we're just going to play anyone that'll play us anytime, any space, anywhere. And they did that. Florida State, it was a miracle. And Florida State's getting it going again. You saw where they flipped the big tight end from Georgia. This stuff all goes in cycles, doesn't it?
Oh, there's no doubt about it. I mean, it goes in absolute cycles. I mean, we've seen, look, Alabama and go in cycles. I tell a lot of our young listeners that are, 30 and under, hey, look, I remember the mid-90s, Alabama was not that good. Florida State, you're right. They're kind of on their way back. I have Florida State winning the ACC this year over Clemson. This is as talented of a team as they've had down there with Mike Norvell in a number of years. But it does come in cycles. You see the powers move and shake. Michigan, Ohio State, all of them, they're not always good. I mean, we saw Georgia forever, could never get over the hump. Now they're over the hump. So it's definitely a cycle business for sure.
Yeah. Come back a few more minutes after the break. I've got some more questions. So what I want to get into in the SEC, the cycles in college football. Southern Cal, 82 to 02, 20 years, 1 10-plus win season. Alabama, 97 to 07. That 11-year period, 8 of those 11 years, Alabama lost 5 games or more. As my coach, Russell Reed for Hawaii, they lost to Hawaii in that period. We'll be right back for a few more minutes with Jake Wimberly right after this.
Hi, I'm Eleanor Maynard, a fourth-generation residential broker with Hobbs & Realtors. Inventory is still a record low in Memphis, and the demand for more supply is continuing to spread across the Mid-South. Rates are starting to stabilize, which means the number of buyers is picking up daily. If you are interested in taking advantage of today's market, please give me, Eleanor Maynard, your Sidelines Live residential specialist, a call today, and let's discuss your needs. 901-761-1622 or directly on my mobile, 901-219-1905. That's 219-1905.
Looking at it, Jake, the cycles we talk about, Oklahoma after Barry Switzer. And remember the end of the Barry Switzer era at Oklahoma. That didn't end well. Gary Gibbs comes in for 7 years. John Blake, Howard Snellenberger lasted 1 year there. And you have everything in the world at Oklahoma. 51 conference championships, 7 national championships, 7 Heisman Trophy winners. You can have all the money in the world. And but if you don't have the right people in place, it's not going to work. And you're right, with the young people, they don't remember that 97 to 07 from 82, Coach Bryant's last year, to 2009, the third year of Nick Saban. That period of 27 years until they won the national championship in 09 against Texas. Alabama in between then won 1 national championship. Okay, I mean from 82 to 09, that was the 92 national championship. And they won 3 won or shared 3 SEC championships. It's hard to believe. People don't get it. I mean, Roman Harper, he'll tell you he loved Alabama, but, I mean, they struggled against Auburn. This stuff goes in cycles. You've got to be a fan all the time. I've got a lot of Ole Miss and a lot of State friends. And I keep saying, don't put ceilings on yourself. The sky's the limit. They've got so much money coming in now, and there's a ton of talent down there. You get the right people in place, anything is possible. You just did it back-to-back in baseball. Who's to say you can't do it in football? Chris Beard coming in basketball, that scares the hell out of me, because you put that guy, you could drop him in from Jupiter or Mars in the middle of nowhere. He's going to put together a team that'll just be competitive. And he's brought in Wes Flanagan from Auburn, teaming up from his old days at UALR. I'm just saying, you better watch Chris Beard. This guy's it's like having William Wallace as your basketball coach.
No, he's going to make a difference. Yeah, he'll definitely make a difference at Ole Miss. It'll take him a season or two. You can turn these basketball programs around a lot quicker than football, but you're right. There's no need to put ceilings on things. Now, for Mississippi State and Ole Miss to be competitive, now, when we get to this expanded playoff, you could see one or both get into this expanded playoff. But it's all about increasing your talent ratio inside a conference that's the best in the country. But for Mississippi State and Ole Miss, it's also about elite quarterback play. I mean, you look at Mississippi State when they went to number 1 in the country under Dan Mullen, it was primarily because of Dak Prescott and the way that he was playing. Ole Miss, when they went to number 3 in the country, Chad Kelly, the way he was playing. So, I think the premium on the quarterback position is as high as it's ever been, and it's about finding those guys. Take Alabama this year. If Alabama doesn't get this right this year, you could see them slip back in the pack. Now, what does that mean for Alabama? That could be 10-2, which is a great year for most people. It's not for Alabama, but it's important to get that quarterback position right. And there's a lot of schools that are quite, and some big time battles headed into the fall.
Yeah, Jake, you're right. It's all relative, isn't it? I mean, sure. Oh God, 10-2, but you've got to have standards. You've got to have really high standards. And by the way, never, I always remember, you and I are old enough to remember the Tonight Show. How many times did someone like David Brenner or whoever come out there and say, by the way, I'll appearing at the Sands Hotel in Las Vegas Thursday through Sunday. Come see me, shameless plug. And Ed McMahon would be over there like, Johnny Carson would love it. But always, I love it. You're wearing the Brandon High School gear. 15 years you've been the play-by-play voice of it. Without you doing that and telling these stories about high school football, we don't have college. And it starts even, earlier than that. So never, ever worry about it. I love it. I love all the background and everything. What are you talking about on your show today? Tell people how they can follow you, and we'll do it again next week.
Yeah, today we'll catch up. We'll do a little postseason recap as far as spring practice, probably with Mike Hugan and with On3. We'll get into some other stuff. We'll start doing, speaking of high school football, spring high school football previews with some of the biggest coaches in the state of Mississippi. So that college football will continues to turn. You and I'll get into this at some point. I'll start dropping my analytics for 2023, probably by the end of the week on my website, cfbhourglass.com. So, college football never stops. High school football never stops. And then, of course, you got some big baseball series coming up this weekend. Mississippi State trying to go grab a third one in a row over at Auburn this weekend. Ole Miss with a big one with LSU coming in. So there's a lot to get to today.
Yeah, never a dull moment. Love it. Jake Wimberly, ESPN 105.9, the afternoon drive. See you next week.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. See you then.
All right. You bet it. All right, let's say something real quick about one of our sponsors, rumbleboxinggym.com/Midtown Memphis. Ann Camp Lee, the owner. This is the first of Ann's 3 gyms. Now, look, my dad got on to me and said, remind them, it's at the corner, right on the corner of Union and McLean. It's on the corner right there across from the Walgreens. You can't miss it. Rumble Boxing Gym. It is time to party. Rumble Boxing Gym is now open at 1835 Union Avenue, Midtown Memphis. Please come to our open house party on Saturday from 12 to 3 p.m. and bring everyone you know. We will have studio tours, meet the training team, jazz band from 11:30 to 12:30, free stretches from Stretch Lab, free B12 shots, a DJ from 1 to 3, food truck, mimosas, raffles, merchandise for sale, raffles, giveaways, cornhole, and much more. That is rumbleboxinggym.com, 1835 Union Avenue. And what Ann has been telling me is that the people that have been going in say these are the best workouts they've ever had. I'm going to this workout up there tomorrow night. Looking forward to it. They're going to put us through a grueling workout. Matt Dean is going to be with us up there tomorrow night. Audrey's going to work out. This is tough. Listen, man, 24 weight benches with dumbbells, 24 punching bags, and in the middle, more group training. These are 45-minute workouts. 1835 Union Avenue, right there on the corner of McLean, across the street from Walgreens. Hey, you got to be physically fit, mentally alert, and morally straight to make it. That's just the way it is. rumbleboxinggym.com. And also, if you are looking to relocate to Memphis, you've got to have a realtor. Don't pull your hair out. Don't stay up at night worrying yourself sick. Don't resort to desperation. Use Eleanor Maynard, Hobson Realty. She is top 5% out of more than 4,600 realtors in the Memphis market in 2022. Third generation Hobson Realtor. It's a turnkey operation. You get Eleanor Maynard involved, everything, to the banking, the financing, the whole team. She will help you make it happen. If you're relocating to Memphis, you've got to buy a home. Call Eleanor Maynard, Hobson Realty. She's on our website, www.sidelines.live. Okay? So, very, very important. Doug Dean going to join us here momentarily from Birmingham. Man, I love having Jake Wimberly on there. Before that, Roman Harper from SEC Network. Man, we're learning a lot, picking up a lot of good knowledge. And, of course, we got to love one of the best. We got to get him hooked up. Time zone kind of crazy, but our good friend Dave Cody, longtime 36-year sports anchor, KTBC Channel 7 in Austin, Texas, home of the Texas Longhorns. Interesting point here. If Colt McCoy doesn't get hurt and leave the game in 2009, does Alabama win the national championship? You know, we'll never know. How many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop? A 1, a 2, a 3. We may never know. But Bama kicking game was atrocious in that game, and Garrett Gilbert almost rallied Texas. Then he fizzled out as the starter the next season. I'm telling you, folks, you think it's fun being an SEC fan, going to these games, these tailgates. Wait until you bring Texas and Oklahoma in. Hey, it's already the best there is. It's about to be on another level because these folks will travel. And you're going to want to travel to Norman. You're going to want to travel to Austin. These are fun places. Austin, the capital city. Norman, you know, right outside of Bricktown. Oklahoma City. You talk about a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. All right, something's interesting. Texas. Donors will always have a say at Texas, says one of our listeners. Wow, the legend of Bob Wills. Donors will always have a say at Texas. The university administration answers only to money. The ghost of Bob Wills. I love that song by Waylon Jennings. This is a song we wrote on the way from Dallas to San Antonio, on the way to Lubbock, in between a stop off in Waco. About who's the king of swing. Bob Wills is still the king of Texas swing. Interesting stuff. You're not gonna have too much of an argument from anyone that the powers that be at Texas only answer to the people giving money. You've got to have your big donors, and Texas has got a ton of them, and so does Texas A&M. They've got them at Auburn too. Everybody's pumping money into NIL, so we'll see what happens with it. Doug Dean down in Birmingham, the Magic City. Also, Doug Dean, Guy Fieri called from drive-ins, dives, and diners. He would like for you to be on and just personally take him around Birmingham, because he was very impressed, as was most of the free world, by your selection of restaurants in Birmingham, because I think it's underrated as a food city, and don't ever sell the Greeks short on what they do in Birmingham, and the Italians too.
That's right. I'm going to approach these fine restaurants and work out some sort of consortium of sponsorship that I will pimp their fine table fare for a once a week segment with the great Rob Browne on this Sideline show. And by the way, when my Atlanta buddies, it's odd because I've always conceded that they're a massive international city and there's so much to like and enjoy there. But one of those things is not massive traffic snarls. Not that Highway 280 in Birmingham's a lot better, but where I get a little snarky is when they go too far and they want to take shots at our lack of a professional team. I guess you can't count USFL, but I told my
you
Atlanta,
can. I love USFL.
You should. I mean, it's fun what that league is doing, and props to Memphis for how they're bringing it back, the showboats. But I played the nuclear card yesterday, Rob, with my Atlanta buddy. I said, listen, dude, I mean, if you want to really, come after Birmingham, that's sort of big brother-ish, and you're acting like little brother. We understand our place in the world. But I said, Birmingham holds exactly as many Super Bowl trophies as Atlanta. Oh.
Boom.
That ended that conversation. No, Atlanta's a fantastic city. I love visiting there. My daughter lived there for 5 years, so I've got nothing but love for the Peach State and Atlanta in particular, in case anybody from there is listening. But just don't come after Birmingham. We do have a great food and wine scene, Rob.
Look, we've got to go to Atlanta for the granddaughter's christening on Sunday, and I wish we could time it to where I could stop by Johnny's there in Homewood. Tim Hunson. I love. Look, you know what? That Memphis Showboats, Birmingham Stallions rivalry in the USFL was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was.
Birmingham doesn't half-ass anything as a city.
Well,
you find me. I mean, even they don't have a pro NFL team, they're still great.
You're kind, you always are, but I'll disagree to a degree. We're still on our training wheels on when you get into these big events and how to manage queues, waiting lines for concessions, and some of those things. But those are all solvable. It's not like trying to build the Hoover Dam, for God's sake. So listen, Rob, I'm bringing the heat this morning. I'm going to give you a way too early forecast in the crystal ball. It's kind of a foggy crystal ball here of the records, the SEC records of both in-state powers, Auburn and Alabama. And I'll save that kind of toward the end and instead start with whatever you want to talk about.
Hey, batter up, man. I'm ready. Doug Dean, when you're on here, and stay on if you can, because Jordan Hill, 24/7 Sports Georgia, is on right after this. And I love the interaction between the two of you. So feel free. The unfastened seatbelt signs are on. Feel free to walk around the cabin for the rest of the show, because you have that authority, because you're smart.
Well, no, I can fake it decently, like Paul Feinbaum. We're honest. But I hope you're listening, Paul. Anyway, so let's start with the easy one, Alabama. Obviously, if you're an Alabama fan, you should still, if you ask me, not that they care to have an Auburn guy's advice, but you should not be down in the mouth about anything. You should take the long view. And if you look at the long view, Alabama's still the GOAT. They're still the closest we've got to a dynasty in college football the last 15 years. But I think if I had to guess, the average Alabama fan is kind of entering into this quietly, like let our play on the field talk in relation to Georgia. And Georgia brings with them the pressure that comes with trying to three-peat, and everybody saying Georgia's schedule is so easy. They won't, it was Mizzou who almost took down the Dogs last year. So you got to be careful on when a team, I don't care who they are, they go on the road in the SEC or even at home if funny things happen. You can't look at the logos on your schedule and just declare, for God's sake, in May that it's easy. It's easier than if you still had Oklahoma on your schedule. I'm talking about Georgia. But let's peek very quickly, because I'm not even going to bore your audience with analytics or team by team. You're going to get an overdose of that as we head into summer. But if Alabama is who I think they are,
Doug, hold those thoughts. We're going to take a quick break. I don't want to get started before then, but we're not bored. This is where we learn. This is what makes this show different, analytics or whatever it is, because it makes sense. Doug Dean is with us. Rob Browne, Sidelines, back right after this quick commercial message.
From Hewlett & Dunn, just coming to let you know about our new collection of boots. It's going to be our dress boots. They're the Horsepower collection, and they're genuine exotic leathers and really comfortable. Comes in all different sizes and patterns, so come check them out.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Doug, let me say something, another thing about ECS House Industries over in Cherry Valley, Arkansas. We have listeners all over the place, based in Memphis and Cherry Farm. We got listeners everywhere. Last night, midnight again, Doug, these farmers over here, you've been to the Cherry Farm. You can see the big spray rigs and these are $400,000, $500,000 pieces of equipment. You see them coming in. They use the bed rotor, the pulverizer, the aerators for catfish farming. It's where they all make it right there in Cherry Valley, Arkansas. To say that you've worked a hard day, you're not a farmer. Because if they have 2 or 3 days of hard rain and they can't get in the fields, that means they build up. And you may be working and sleeping in the tractors. But got a big salute to the American farmers and all these people out here. ECS House Industries, damn proud to have them as one of our sponsors. Blessed beyond belief, and incredible to watch that work ethic. But Doug, let's get going, man. I'm ready to hear it. I've got my pen and paper handy.
Well, I'm not a handicapper, and you're going to have guests who are far more equipped with data and angles. And we really shouldn't even take any of this too seriously until, shall we say, early October. But just for grins, because, we've gotten basketball behind us, and the mid-majors reared their ugly head or their beautiful head. And
Yes.
Blue Bloods are, I'm going to declare today in basketball, not in football, be very clear about that, the death of the Blue Bloods in college basketball. They are no more. They're irrelevant. Sure, you will see UNC and Duke make deep runs, Kentucky. But what I'm saying is the correlation of Final Four, Elite Eight with Blue Bloods is going to evaporate in the coming years. It already did this year. So just a little nugget there. Now back to Alabama, because you said I could roam around the cabin, Rob, and then you declared an emergency landing in the plane to make money, greedy capitalist. Looking at Alabama, September 9th, Rob, of course, they opened with Middle Tennessee. Prayers lifted for MTSU coming to Tuscaloosa. But the Texas Longhorns come back to Tuscaloosa in a preview of the new entrant to the SEC. And what is that in a year, I think? It's Texas and Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Is it 24, Rob?
24.
Perfect. I'm glad they moved that up a year. I don't give Texas much of a chance. Putting it mildly, Alabama will be licking their chops to be ready this time and not have it go down to the wire. But Sarkisian's got quite the quarterback room. So when somebody brings a talented QB, and meanwhile, that's only 2 games in for Alabama to have a really an untested QB unless they go in the portal, which I guess Saban could do. He certainly got the NIL war chest to do it. Problem is, I'm not seeing any QBs entering the portal yet, but that could change in the days ahead. But here's what I do want to say about the Texas game. Rob, if Alabama, it doesn't put them away in, say, by third quarter, and that game's kind of leaks its way down to the final wire, then college football owes us Texas place kicker Bert Auburn. Bert Auburn looks like Carrot Top as a senior, lining up for a 52-yard field goal
Yeah.
to tie the game and send it to overtime. And I don't think that's about a 5% likelihood. But you do have to take Sarkisian seriously. And I think this year's really going to be an interesting test. Can Sarkisian and that program turn the corner? I don't have a prediction on that right now. But back to Alabama's schedule, I think I would worry, if I'm a Bama fan, a little bit about any road trip to College Station. Alabama's significantly better than A&M on paper, but Bobby Petrino there, and for a single game, an offensive mind like that working with Jimbo, that Alabama should win it. But that's one I would circle and put on my worry list. I would not worry about Tennessee. I wouldn't even worry about LSU coming to Tuscaloosa, because both of those back-to-back, by the way, the 2 teams that knocked Alabama out of the playoff. Alabama gets them October 21, November 4th, so it's kind of a 2-week preparation for LSU. Alabama wins both those. I think, gosh, frankly, I've got Alabama running the table unless something weird happens, like the Mississippi schools aren't going to beat them, unless the Aggies or maybe I just don't see anybody else that looks on paper to be able to even stay with them in the trenches. So, not look for an Alabama-Georgia rematch in Atlanta. I think you're kind of being a little silly to predict otherwise at the moment. But that I reserve the right to change that in early October, right? Mm-hmm. Comments?
Oh, absolutely. I know. I agree with you. I think that Roman Harper was on in the first segment, and he said, "In Nick, we trust." He goes, "I'm going to keep going with that, because when have they not gotten it right at quarterback?" And they always do, if it's Jalen Milroe, if it's Ty Simpson, whoever it is. And they, who's to say they won't go to the portal? Everybody is. And here's a technical thing here. The original window was supposed to have been May 1st to May 15th. Now it's April 15th to the 30th. So, yeah, That wouldn't surprise me. The more competitive your quarterback room is, the better it makes everybody else. When you put other males around other competitive males, the testosterone level goes through the roof.
Yeah, you go, and I'm, so that people don't accuse me of just, appeasing your Bama audience.
Yeah, not at all.
That's not where I'm coming from. But realistically, if you want to say Alabama had a lot of losses of super talented, grizzled veteran guys, not the least of which Bryce Young.
Yeah.
It's shocking to me that the kid with that talent didn't manage to get in and win the national championship game. But there are reasons for that. But if you look at where Alabama could stumble and let's say maybe have one regular season loss, you have to look at road games. I don't see anybody coming into – I mean, LSU might be talented enough, but I don't see them coming into T-Town and leaving with a win. But look at road games. And I already mentioned Texas A&M October 7th. There are 2 late season. I don't know to what extent Stoops has reloaded at Kentucky, but that's a tricky November 11th late season game at Kentucky. And, like you saw with Georgia, there was no reason going in to think that Mizzou could give Georgia any trouble. There's no reason to think Kentucky can hang with Alabama, but the SEC and Stoops goes heavily into the portal. So I'd like to see what they look like, by late October, and that one might look trickier. And then just because of the history of it, not because that Hugh Freeze is likely to have it all rolling year one after the mess that Harsin left. But you're going to Jordan-Hare Stadium. You just got to put that one as a little bit on the worry list, although I think Alabama going in is likely to be a double-digit favorite even at Jordan-Hare.
Well, this is an interesting observation from one of our listeners from Monroeville, Alabama, Atticus Finch, who says, it's easy to look out of the window from 40,000 feet above and say, well, there's a lot of pine trees on the ground down there. It's different being on the ground trying to navigate your way through there. So when you look at the schedule now, it's daunting compared to every week it changes. And what you do today merely positions you for what you do tomorrow. It's like my favorite day of the week is Monday morning. I love it. I wake up out of bed, 5 alive. It's going to be a great day because a lot of people are going to be just, oh, I'm tired. So I look at it that way, but I don't think you're trying to appease at all. I've known you for a while now. You're a straight shooter. You tell things the way you see them.
Yeah, thank you. And I got you live by your record, and people on your show, listening to your show a long time. I have enormous respect for Coach Saban and that program.
Yeah,
one
you
per year, you know that deal. But you don't respect that program. You're just delusional, and you're not being fair and objective. So flipping to Auburn, this you could theme this, Rob. Tap the brakes on the irrational exuberance. And here's what I mean by that. It is remarkable when we were sitting 53rd in recruiting when Freeze arrived, and he succeeded, arguably the laziest coach not in terms of game planning and practice, but in terms of recruiting. I mean, the laziest, sloppy head coach I've ever observed at any level in college football, Brian Harsin, almost to the point he should get a show cause for coaching incompetence and laziness, not for violations. But so Coach Freeze's degree of mess that he's got to clean up, he's got a huge down payment on it, vaulting Auburn to 15th in most of the ratings. And then he's continued to add to that out of the portal. From all the reports coming out of Lee County in spring, and it's a limited number of practices, but people who would know say there is a marked upgrade in the offensive line. And that, to me, is the story in the offseason. That's a story in the spring. Everybody wants to talk about QB1, rightly so. But Auburn's woes, arguably, since 2013. We had a good year in 2017, blew it when Gus got distracted with contract revisions and lying about Arkansas pursuing him. But it's offensive line that has been the Achilles heel and unattended. But here's the problem. Hugh has probably taken us from very, very below average to slightly above average. So you look at Auburn's schedule, if you're slightly above average on the O-line, and we avoid injury for that matter, then even with the great running backs room we've got, and hopefully if Ashford, the light bulbs go off, and we've got his athleticism and he's serviceable throwing, or they go in the portal and get a guy, there's not anybody there yet, then even being slightly above average, you can look at Auburn's schedule with the Aggies. We got Cal the second game. I hadn't looked at what they're bringing back, but that's not a home early season non-conference gimme. We've got to go to College Station like Bama does. Georgia comes in September 30th. That's an L, barring something wild. Then we go to Death Valley. I don't see Auburn winning that game, although it's mid-season. Auburn might be a different team by that point. You can't ever put a guaranteed W there with Lane Kiffin. It's at Auburn. I think Auburn beats the two Mississippi schools. Should win at Vanderbilt. Then you go to Fayetteville. That's a tricky one. And close the season out with Alabama. So there you can be above average and still lose 6 games this year if you're Hugh Freeze. And I've decided preseason, Rob, I'm going to be fair to Freeze. He wasn't my guy early on. He is now. And I'm going to give him to at least 2025 to really give a scorecard on him.
Yeah, and I think you're right about the recruiting. I mean, an example of how bad it was, Phoenix City Central. And Mark Murphy, inside the Auburn Tigers, one of my journalistic mentors for 42 years, told me a couple of years ago, he said, there's 30 or more Division I prospects on the Phoenix City Central roster. And the Auburn coaches can't find their way to Phoenix City. Listen, I lived in Auburn. I lived in Columbus for years. It's 30 minutes or less to get there. And they had to call Auburn and ask, would somebody please come over? I mean, and I don't know why Auburn did not fire Browne Harsin with cause. If they're interested in just giving away millions of dollars, well, we don't want to go through the fight. No, you should have, because donors gave that money. And I'd be mad as hell, but you're right. The laziest, worst recruiter, the only worst hire in Auburn history, other than Stephen Leith, would be Tony Barbie.
Yeah, I mean, gosh. I mean, I wasn't there in the 1900s, Rob, but at Auburn. Maybe there was a worse coach at the turn of the century back then, but I searched my memory bank, and I mean, I think Harsin, it's only a couple of year database, but worse than Doug Barfield. You agree?
Barfield could recruit.
Yeah,
I mean, think about that. William Andrews, Joe Cribbs, James Brooks, Frank Warren, James McKinney, Jim Scuthan. But yeah, you're right. I'm game planner, not that bad. But
somewhere Doug Barfield is saying, thank you, Bryan Harsin.
Yeah, it's kind of like some presidents are going, thank you to the current one. I mean, it's just the way it goes.
Yeah. Now, let me just put an addendum on that foolish late April discussion of the two in-state rivals, Auburn and Alabama. It is so meaningless right now because in Tuscaloosa, Milroe, I think he's such an athlete, but I'm sure they're concerned about who can we truly count on to take a big step when you've got a young and sort of unproven in the SEC offensive coordinator coming here from Notre Dame who could end up being spectacular, the next Joe Brady, like that LSU road to glory in 2019, or he could find the sledding tough when you start playing SEC defenses. I'm, for one, from a distance as an Auburn guy, I'm anxious to see what Saban wants. Does he want to continue this high octane being able to win games 48-45, or does he want to see if he can, like Georgia arguably did last year, go back to protect your defense more, mash people running the ball and set up play action? I think you're going to see more of the latter in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah. And speaking of Auburn, I've watched Ron Roberts for a while, Delta State, Southeast Louisiana. That creeper defense, it's known for being good at slow down and interrupt those up-tempo RPO offenses. Doesn't mean that people don't have a book on him, but he's smart, and I think he's evolving, Doug.
Yeah. Well, and if you're an Auburn fan, here's a pro tip. I'm not a pro, but I talk to some pros. Here's how you absolutely enjoy this season as an Auburn fan. I mean, unless we have injuries and there's a collapse that will be explainable. It won't be because we've got a bad coaching staff. But to borrow that great line, which I used to hear on the TV, Rob, when I would wake up with the TV watching me at 4 a.m, and it's called High Flight. I know you've heard that. To slip the surly bonds, slip the surly bonds of grading your enjoyment on whether Auburn wins 10 plus games or not, because we're not going to win 10 plus games this season. You got to have a loaded deck to go into this gauntlet in the SEC West. And weird things can happen, I suppose. But if Auburn got to 9 or 10 wins, what that would mean is they found some elite quarterback, or Robbie Ashford becomes sort of Nick Marshall release 2.0 this year, which I think is awful. So, but look at the trajectory.
Yeah. And Doug, hold those thoughts. We're going to take a quick break, and Jordan Hill's going to be on with us when we come back. But I agree with you. Could he be another Nick Marshall if they can work on the short and intermediate pass?
Yep.
We've never had a faster quarterback on the Plains ever than Robbie Ashford. Right back. Doug, what you say, it would be a shock if Auburn were to win 9 or 10 games. But you look at first years of coaches like Terry Bowden, Gene Chizik won 8 his first year. There have been some pretty strong case. Gus Malzahn's first year, but he had been there for 3 years, left for a year, pretty familiar with the team. I don't see that happening this year. I hope it does. But
people, if we're smart, and we don't, our rivals want to, typically the way the game is played is they want you to think that we should expect 9 or 10 wins, and that sort of sets you up to be down in the mouth and negativity swirls around. Don't take the bait. This is a reclamation process. It's not a reload. So, but for Hugh Freeze to have a puncher's chance at 9 wins, which I think's it's like a 10% shot. You got to get to 4-0, and that would include beating Cal September 9th and going on the road at College Station and sneaking out of there with a win, which is going to be difficult. Then all of a sudden you start to look at the 2 Mississippi games, Vanderbilt, Arkansas on the road, New Mexico State, and it's not impossible. So Auburn, enjoy the trajectory. I'll make this bold prediction, Rob. And this is what I'm looking for. I want to see Hugh Freeze at Auburn. I know what he did at Ole Miss and Liberty, but he's going to get in a game that we're not supposed to win. And let's say he gets a 10-point lead. It's third quarter. I want to see Hugh Freeze not play not to lose. I don't think that's – but you can watch for things like that and learn about what do we think that realistically the trajectory should look like once he gets – a roster built, which he's well on his way to. It's going to take another couple of years with portal and top 10 recruiting. What kind of coach do we have in coaching staff, especially coordinators, once we're playing on little more of a level playing field? Hey, Jordan, how are you doing?
Hey, doing good.
I'm going to get out of y'all's way. I'm going to steal the microphone from Rob and ask you, because of the new waiver rules with portal transfers, coming out of spring, who's Kirby's guy? And I know what he's doing. He said, well, I think we're going to have to play all 3 of them. What you did there, Kirby, we see it. But I assume maybe it's not completely determined, but how do you see that pecking order right now? And then should Vandegrift be considered needing to transfer for his well-being, which is one of the waiver rules?
Yeah, I think Carson Beck is the guy just based off of how spring ended. He played really, really well, was the best of the three quarterbacks at G-Day. Brock had his moments, and to be fair to Brock, when Carson was making all those plays, he was playing behind that first-team offensive line, and he had a whole lot of time. But as far as Brock, I think it still makes sense for him to stay put. He can't go to an SEC team if he were to leave. I mean, try to get a waiver, but that's not a guarantee. I still don't think this thing is locked up and signed, sealed, delivered Carson Beck's starting quarterback, because Brock played pretty well through the spring. And just, when it comes to G-Day, I made sure to emphasize to people that was one of 15 practices. And Carson had a good spring as a whole and ended it on a high note. But I think it makes sense, especially because right now they've only got 3 scholarship quarterbacks, which is really not what you want. I mean, you want to have at least one per class and have 4 guys. And Georgia didn't sign anybody the last year trying to get Arch Manning and wound up not doing so. But I think it makes the most sense for Brock to leave. I can understand why he would decide to leave, but I think he stays put. Georgia has 3 scholarship quarterbacks going into the fall.
Jordan, do you think Vandegrift is probably the backup as we sit?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he made plays on Saturday. Didn't play he had some mistakes, threw an interception. He's a little bit more mobile than Carson Beck. And if there was a situation where all of a sudden, we turn around and Brock is a starter, I think what would give him the upper hand is that he can move a little bit better. And that was something that Kirby talked about the day after the national title game against TCU, saying, with Stetson, something that Kirby kind of learned to put a little more value in is that mobility and that ability to move around and make plays in the pocket. That's something Stetson had. It's something Brock has. Carson's not like a statue back there, and he played in 7 games last year, and you saw him scramble a little bit. It wasn't like he cannot move, but Brock's definitely the more fluid runner of the two, and I think it makes sense to have 2 guys that kind of give you different things, and if you get into a situation we get into the season where maybe Carson struggles, you've got a guy like Brock that brings some other things to the table.
Yeah. Well, and along those lines is Georgia wide receivers. They've got talent up and down that roster, but you've only had one. We know Terrence Edwards in 98 or 99 out of Sandersville, Washington County High School. A lot of great players, Takeo Spikes, Robert Edwards, a bunch of them. Do you see Georgia trying to do anything different than what they've done the last 5 years? I can't imagine why they would.
I don't think so. And the thing with this year's receiving core, they are incredibly deep. Like, Rob, I could sit here and write out, I think we'll see more 3 receiver sets than we did last year, when they went very tight end heavy. But I could write a few different combinations where you would hand that to somebody and they'd be like, I feel pretty good about that. I mean, you could go Marcus Rosemy, Jack Saint, Lad McConkey, Arian Smith, which I believe is how they started on Saturday. And you'd feel good about that. You've got Ra Thomas and Dom Lovett, that they could be somewhere in that mix. You've got C.J. Smith, who was a redshirt freshman this year, a really fast guy. He's been making plays. Jackson Meeks had a 29-yard touchdown on Saturday. You got 3 freshmen that are coming in that were all 4 stars. And so, I think they are so deep. It's been a talking point these last few years about, Georgia has not had a 1,000-yard receiver since Terrence Edwards, and I don't think they're going to, but I don't think that's because they can't. It's because they don't have to. They don't have to have one guy that gets all these yardage. And I think if someone were to hit it, it's not even going to be a wide receiver. It's going to be Brock Bowers. But they got so many guys. Another guy I didn't mention earlier, Dylan Bell, was probably the best freshman receiver they had last year, and he made a really good catch on Saturday as well. They are incredibly deep at receiver. I think we might see a couple of those guys leave this offseason just because there's so many options, but they're going to be in really good shape at that position going into 2023.
Jordan, I'm probably more so than the analytics of college football, which is out of control. There's some phenomenal websites that you can do data cuts that will make you conclude that you can predict the game score before they've even played. But what I'm more interested in, especially here in the SEC, is the psychology of football teams and especially the head coaches. And I don't know Kirby. I've watched him from a distance when he was doing his magic for Saban at Alabama, and then I've admired the way he's what he's done the last really the 3 years ago is underrated for how he was getting a winning attitude installed. But I'm gonna guess here, and you tell me if I'm probably in the ballpark about where the space between Kirby Smart's ears might be as we sit after spring. I bet it is driving him nuts that they're all the talk is, well, they're just a lock to three-peat now, and it's driving Kirby nuts that rat poison, as Saban calls it, is going to get in this team's head, because you only have to, if you're a Georgia fan, you only have to go back to the Mizzou game last year and say, well, who in August said, well, that's a worrisome game. So, of course, Georgia will be able to lose one regular season game, as unlikely as that is. If you look at the schedule, or they do go to Tennessee. Any other year, if we were in the 80s, they go to Auburn, I'd say worry about that. I don't worry about it this year if I'm Kirby. I'm trying to set y'all up a little there, Jordan. So is Kirby I bet he is going to just be very hard on this team all fall camp and almost make them feel unworthy to play the game of football and see if he can create some anger.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, you go back to last year, there were so many players, especially at the end of the year, were like, well, everybody was saying we were going to win 6 games, and we were all really looking around like, what the hell are they talking about? And, I mean, Kirby's convinced those guys nobody thinks they can win. And, it's not true, but credit to him for getting them on board,
Yeah.
And I think one realistic thing that I've heard him mention, and it was part of the conversation last year, is that he said a lot. The one of the talking points this spring was inherited, not earned. As in, a lot of the guys that are coming back did not, play big roles. There are several guys who are back, but a lot of the guys that are stepping up into bigger roles were not starters on either of the last 2 teams. They might have came in and played some snaps, but they were not directly responsible for winning the championships. And that's been a big talking point. And to me, that's the approach that makes the most sense to me, is to say, you guys, everybody thinks you guys are so good, but you haven't proven that. Ra Thomas, you just transferred in here. You haven't played a snap here. Carson Beck, you just came in and played some mop-up duty. You haven't shown us anything. I think that's just, he's got them in the right direction of understanding they haven't earned anything, and they're going to have to go earn whatever they get in 2023.
Rob, I'm about to get out of here. This is a provocative question. And it's, the minute you make a forecast like this, it's probably wrong, like economic forecast. But arguably, Jordan, you pronounce it Jordan or Jordan?
Jordan. It was Jordan when I lived in Lee County, but we're
That's
back
right.
to Jordan.
I like the Jordan hair pronunciation, but you're smart to change the dialect. And Georgia needs to run the table regular season. And the reason is they're going to almost certainly face the Crimson Tide in this SEC championship game. And depending on other Power 5, the Ohio States and others of the world, there's a little raise. You got a chance if you lose a competitive game to Alabama and you're a one-loss Georgia, you're in the playoff in all likelihood with another year 14 playoff. You agree with that?
I agree, because their schedule is really weak this year. I mean, if I had to forecast, I would say, if they go undefeated, their best wins would be, Tennessee on the road, probably Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss will be pretty good. South Carolina, that game will be in Athens. And then after that, I mean, maybe a surprise Auburn. I mean, Kentucky. I just, their schedule is really weak. And we've talked about this before. It's really not their fault. They were going to play Oklahoma to start the year, and I believe that game was going to be in Norman. And with Oklahoma coming in, the SEC took that game off the schedule, a couple other ones, because essentially they were saying, you guys better get ready because you may play them now and then in 2 years be making another return trip there. So it only made sense for Georgia to do that. But, yeah, they do not have a schedule they can fall back on and say, well, look, we beat this team and this team and this team.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be a situation, unless some of these teams really surprise, there's not going to be a lot of, like, marquee wins on the schedule.
Jordan, I say this with some years of watching commentators and analysts, but I think you're way ahead of schedule in terms of talent. You're doing a fine job, young man.
I appreciate that, Doug.
I'm out of here, Rob.
All right, Doug, thank you so much. We'll be back on with you later during the week. And I like that insight. And I think he's right, Jordan. And by the way, it's funny. You go from middle Alabama, from Selma, where Shug Jordan was from. And I've asked his son, Ralph Jr., who's a friend of mine, about that. It's an old Welsh pronunciation, I think. They were from West Virginia. They were coal miners, moved down to Selma. But even my fraternity brother who lives in Monticello, Georgia, we stopped at Fresh Air Barbecue on the way over there one time in college, pronounces it Jordan, Robert O. Jordan. And he's an engineer, has a firm there in Monticello. But Jordan, you only hear it in central Alabama and central Georgia. So maybe there's someone needs to do could that be a 30 for 30? But I digress. But
I did want to say too, Rob, in Columbus, when I lived there, Bill Jordan, which I think, is that Realtree? What is Bill Jordan?
Yeah, that's Realtree, yes.
Yeah, that was, the family was Jordan, and there's I don't know if it's the same family, but Jordan High School. That's how you pronounced it, Jordan too. So anytime anyone would say it wrong, I'd say I've been called worse. You can go with that.
Yeah, and I think Bill Jordan played football with Archie Manning at Ole Miss. I think he did, because he used to come into the newsroom there on 13th Street at WRBL. I kept thinking he's from Jacksonville, Florida, and was a wide receiver at Ole Miss with Elijah Archibald Manning from Drew, Mississippi, which is where my friend Trey Edwards Duck Club, the Whistling Wings Duck Club, is in Drew, Mississippi. He used to work there at Mallard Manor, but it's interesting. We'll find out about it. But if I'm Kirby Smart, I go in there and I give my team this speech. I say, a lot of you guys were born on home plate and you think you hit a damn grand slam and you ain't done anything. You're just wearing that Georgia uniform. But the guys that, you're part of this team, yeah, I'll give you that. But you ain't proved a damn thing yet. And as our good friend Jimmy Ott, ESPN 104.5 down in Baton Rouge says, LSU man, he goes, potential is just Cajun French for you ain't done a damn thing yet. So I'm using every angle I can get. And you find me, now I love to watch and listen when I'm out riding or just driving or hiking or whatever, motivation tapes. But you find me, many guys as good at firing up a team as Kirby Smart. I don't know if he has a degree in psychology, and you're around him. I'm not. But I think he could get you fired up, as I like to say, to walk the green mile.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean,
He's that good.
Yeah, I mean, and the results speak for themselves. I mean, look at where Georgia was and think about the reputation Georgia had for so long was close, but not close enough. And, he's gotten these guys through. And, we've heard, some of the leaks from some of his speeches sometimes. Rob, even some of the stuff he said right then was way too clean to be a Kirby Smart speech. But,
yes.
But yeah, I mean, I think, and I do really think, and we've heard players talk about this before, that there's more of a buy-in with a guy like Kirby because he's been there. He played at Georgia. He knows what it's like. He knows, what it's like walking off the field in Jacksonville with a loss. I mean, he knows what it's like to line up and play against Auburn. I mean, he's a guy that is not just saying, hey, you should do this because, we want to represent the school. Well, he went through it. He played. And he, went through, had big moments and had moments where things didn't go Georgia's way. So I do think that helps with a lot of kids is he's been there, done that. And now, especially like I think about the defensive backs he's coached, he was one of those defensive backs. He played safety at Georgia.
Yeah.
I think that helps with the buy-in, knowing that a guy that went to the university is running the team, and two, a guy that has played and went through those hard times, just like these guys are going through. He did it too.
Yeah, I like your take on that, especially because he wasn't the biggest guy when he played defensive back at Georgia, but he's a fighter, and he wasn't given anything. And you look at coaches around the league that are like Nick Saban. He's not the tallest guy, but he was a damn competitive football player, and those are the guys that tend to make great coaches. His mentor, Don James, was a United States Marine, and he had to convince him because his wife, Terry Saban, was getting a master's at Kent State to stay and go into coaching. Think about that. What if he decided not to? I don't know. He'd probably been the best salesman or whatever he does in the country. But anyway, Jordan, we have run out of time. Love having you on here. And most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us people. We live in the greatest country in the history of the world because we have the best guests like Jordan Hill. Tell people how they can follow you. And as always, we appreciate your time and look forward to having you on again next week. We love it.
Definitely. Dogs247.com, on Twitter at Jordan Davis Hill, on Twitter at Dogs247. So all over, college football and the transfer portal, seeing what happens there. Still recapping some G-Day stuff and doing a little UGA hoops. They landed a transfer from Illinois earlier this week, so I'll have a story on that today. So busy time still, and let the countdown till college football season gets here continue.
Yeah, no excitement on this end at all.
No,
Hey.
I've got other things to do.
Yeah. Hey, thank you so much. Have a great week, everybody. Thanks for listening. We're out of here. We'll see you tomorrow.